right? Y'all know what we're about to do. We're about to do what we're about to get into. It's going to have a very powerful conversation tonight. It's going to be school week. It's going to be a very sensitive topic, I do believe. But I think we're grown enough to handle it, right? Because after all, this is what? Grown folk what? Grown folk conversation. I think we should be able to handle that. I have a nice wine for you all again tonight. We've had this one before, but I thought it would be all right to try. Right? It's Wednesday, y'all. How was you all's Wednesday? Of course, you all know that it's my prep day. I'm here meditating and getting ready for Wind Down Wednesday, baby. All right. ATL, Priestess Lavelle, Queen Octavia out of the ATL. Boy, I know y'all ready for this conversation tonight. Boy, this is going to be a good one. Population control by transforming your sexual behavior. Isn't that interesting? Then I'm going to introduce you all to our wine glass. I'm going to pour wine in there tonight to help you see it better. Wine down Wednesday, baby. Yes, indeed. Oh, he's in the house tonight, y'all. It's the intuitive one, Craig Leverett. Oh, yeah, it's about to go down. Hey, intuitive one, it's about to go down, baby. We finna get ready to have a grown folk conversation. We getting ready to talk about, man, how they are transforming people's sexual behavior. Uh, it's interesting. It's interesting. And I know you all are going to catch on to this real quick because we have a very intelligent family that comes in and hangs out, right? So, okay, here's what we're going to do for you, for me, and for us. Let's go ahead and hit that share button so we can get everybody up in here so we can go ahead on and get this conversation started because I want to introduce you all to Dr. Hayes. I know those that are coming in, a lot of people don't know who that is. They don't even know he exists and what it is that he has done. So it's very important for us to be able to get information and to share this information. Okay, there she is, Queen Shalita. What's going on? All right. Remember, when you all come in the room, please let us know where you're hailing from so we can make these connections. We can look out for each other. And if you have a business, please, please, please put it on the timeline, okay? So that we can patronize each other. There he is, the master teacher, the quantum shifter, the shape shifter, the code breaker, baby. Yes, indeed. We're going to get it on tonight. Again, tonight's topic is what? Population control by transforming your what? Sexual behavior. How many of you all know that they're messing with your sexual orientation? Isn't that something? Yeah, this is what they're doing for educational purposes only. Yeah, entertainment purposes only. Minnesota in the house, South Kakalaki in the house. Yes, indeed. Gratitude to you all. To shout you all out because this is amazing how you all have been supportive and you've been here. And I want to give you guys a hand. Is that all right? One more time. And also, how about a drum roll? Yes, indeed. Y'all know where you at, right? You're in Wind Down Wednesday Therapy with a Sip, grown folk conversation on the People's Podcast. That's right. This the People's Podcast, baby. This is where you come to be recognized and celebrated, right? Yes, indeed. This is where you come to have grown folk conversation. Mhm, mhm. Isn't that something? Let me hit this share button real quick, fam, and we're gonna get this wine poured up, and we're gonna get into this conversation, baby. And I'm gonna introduce you all to some information because what? Information brings about what? Transformation. That's how we're transformed through what? Information, right? That's why we have to share it. I'm gonna put something up here in just a minute here to kind of just get us steered in the direction in which we're going. Okay. Okay. let me- No, I silenced you. How did you? Excuse me. Whatever they've done out here with these updating Facebook and all of this, fam, they have really run amok. Okay. Excuse me. Trying to close this app. It don't want to close. Isn't that something? There we go. Yeah. I tell you, Facebook, y'all trip. Okay, family. Y'all coming in? Y'all in the room? In the upper room? Yes, indeed. Let me hit the share button real quick here. Drop it in a couple of spots here real quick, and we're gonna move on, fam. Okay. We're not gonna be labeled this point, but we do want to share, right? That's why we have the share button. Okay. Gratitude for you all sharing as well. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, fam. What we're gonna do is we're gonna pour this wine up and we're gonna get into this conversation. And I think if you're in here, you may wanna stay in here, right? Because this is about to be off the chain. Okay. Now, I want you to we're gonna take a look at something here in just a minute. But I want to quote something to you all from Albert Einstein. Let me put it out here on the timeline for you guys. Give me just a second here. I think it's interesting to note this because it's going to kind of take us in the direction where we're going. Okay. Okay. I want y'all to take a look at this and see what you think about this. All right. Okay. Remember, please, when you come in, if you're on the timeline out there, y'all, please wave at us or something. Put an emoji on the timeline. Let us know you're in here and you with us and you hanging out with us. Okay, look at this. This is a quote from Albert Einstein. Dr. Hayes is going to allude to this at the end of his dissertation, but I wanted to give this to you all so that you'll already be up on it, right? Okay. Y'all see that? Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. Y'all see that? Those who have the privilege to know, listen to this. Those that have the privilege to know have the duty to act. If you comprehend that, put a one on the timeline. We'll get on the same page here. Before we go ahead on and pour this wine up, I see Queen Octavia put something on the timeline. Let me put this out here. All right. Queen Octavia says, nowadays it seems like any and everything goes. I agree. Great point. All right. So let me pop the cap on this wine. There he is, the Prince of Peace. JP is in the house. All right. Okay. All right. All right. All right. I see y'all putting them ones out there. All right. So you have a duty to act now. When you are privy to information, when you get that information, now you have a duty to act. You just can't get information and then sit on it, right? Which is why we what have wind down Wednesday, because what we're acting upon the information that we have, and then we're sharing that information with you. Okay. So let me we come on, Andre. This is Andre. I found Andre again. Hello, Andre. Andre, you all. I know some of you all remember this from back in the day, that cold duck, baby. Andre. Yes, indeed. Let me pull up a bail. Y'all know how we do it. We got to pull that bail up because that's all they give us for what? 14.99. Is a what? A bail. Hmm. See if you guys get me through a bail tonight. Ooh, look at that. Look at there. Look at that. Wine down Wednesday. Isn't that something? Let me set that there and move this around. Let that air out a little bit. All right, you all, let me give my famous toast and we're going to get into this conversation. I'm going to introduce you all to Dr. Hayes. Please, please just be patient and listen. I endure you. I admonish you to. I ask you to and say, please stay with me. Listen to what he's getting ready to say, family. Okay? It's going to be very powerful. But wind down Wednesday, baby. Now, may you live forever and shall I never die. Salute, salute, salute. Ooh wee. That mouth duck is off the chain. But at any rate, listen, y'all. We're going to listen to this and then we're going to critique it. Okay. I want to see what you guys have to say about this because this is very important. Okay. Okay. Queen Octavia says, show the glass with the wine. There it is right there. Can you all see that? Wine down Wednesday. Y'all better put your order in. And of course, you all know that we have paraphernalia. Wind down Wednesday. Look at that, baby. Look. Let me move this mic so y'all can look at that. Ooh wee. And then it's across the back there too. I don't think I can get you to see it, but there it is back there. Can y'all see that? It's back there. Yes, indeed. Y'all better get you one. All you have to do is DM me. Y'all know how to get into that messenger, right? Okay. All right. Before we get this started, let me get me another one because this conversation gonna be off the chain. I already know. I already know the brainiacs are in the room tonight. Salute, man. Okay. Now, excuse me, I'm getting ready to introduce you all to Dr. Hayes. Now, he's a strange looking fella, but the boy is smart in the whip. All right. 217. I see you, baby, in the house. Juan Pacana too. Listen, listen, you all. Please hang in here. Take a look at it, listen to it, because it's important and it's going to give answers to why there's certain kinds of behavior that we may not necessarily agree with, right? But we live and let live because that's the order of life, right? We're not out to injure anyone, condemn anyone, or hurt anyone. Okay. Now, let me pull this up for you guys, and I want you to take a listen to it. Okay. And I'll be talking with
when a chemical company, the largest chemical company in the world, asked me to use my expertise in studying frog hormones to try to understand if the chemical, their number one selling product, a weed killer, atrazine, if it interfered with their hormones somehow. Long story short, we examined the African clawed frog in my lab, we exposed them to this chemical atrazine, and we showed things like this. And these are testes. And you don't have to have a PhD or be a frog expert to see that there's a difference between the control and the exposed animals. The control testes, if you look at it under the microscope, is full of sperm soldiers ready to go. The atrazine-treated gonad or testes, the testicular tubules are filled with cellular debris. What's more is if you look at the young developing larvae, you often find sometimes, these are the kidneys, if you're not used to looking at frog gonads, that this is an individual, though, that has testes, then it has more ovaries, then it has another testes, then it has more one pair will get you in enough trouble. This guy, this situation is certainly not typical of amphibians. There are fish that are naturally hermaphrodites, but not amphibians. We later showed that some of these animals grow up, even though they're genetic males, to become completely functioning reproductive females, even though they were genetic males. We showed that in other species, the gonads look like this. So those are the testes on the top, and all of that junk in the trunk on the bottom, those are all eggs that are bursting through the surface of this male's testes. Now, I showed this to the Environmental Protection Agency because I thought they'd be interested. After all, it's the number one selling chemical in the world at the time. And they said, well, that's not really an adverse effect that would stimulate us to reassess the chemical. Now, my wife tells me that there is nothing more painful in life than childbirth. I'm gonna have to give her that. But I would guess that a dozen chicken eggs popping out of my testicles would have to be at least in the top 5 most painful experiences.
Let me switch my battery out in my mouth, y'all.
I thought more about why this might happen.
I'll be right back.
So, for example, if this were your testis, you shouldn't make testosterone. Testosterone's a portmanteau. You know, I learned that word at age 49. So when you put 2 words together, like smoke and fog, you get smog. Twist and jerk, you get twerk. Testosterone means testicular hormone. It's literally the male hormone. But we hypothesized that this atrazine turned on an enzyme aromatase that caused the testosterone to be converted to estrogen. And if you're a male, that means that you're using up your testosterone so you don't make sperm, but it also means that you're making the female hormone when you shouldn't be. So then I started to think, we published that in Proceedings in the National Academy of Sciences and Nature, very prestigious journals that'll get you a tenured professorship at a place like UC Berkeley. But journals that, as my mom says, how important can it be? Barnes and Noble's never heard of them. And I started to think, though, about how my work might imply things beyond frogs. So this is a pond in Lake Nabugabo in Uganda, where I started to think that this agricultural runoff might not only affect the frogs and the fish, but also the other animals that are drinking out of the water, including the humans that collect their drinking and cooking water from this same source. Because see, we all make estrogen in the exact same way and use it in the same way. The connection to contaminants in water might not be so obvious for us. This is my village. But things like Erin Brockovich's story and things like Flint, Michigan remind us that we don't necessarily have the resources that we think we have, the clean sources of water. A colleague of mine showed, because I don't study humans, I had to work with other people on this, that if you look at men in Columbia, Missouri, and compare the atrazine in their urine, men who have atrazine in their urine have a low sperm count and can't get their wives pregnant. And by the way, this is the same amount of atrazine, 0.1 parts per billion, that we were using to chemically castrate and feminize our frogs. Another colleague showed, and I've mashed the data down now, because these are atrazine levels of men who work in the fields in California, and these are atrazine levels of men who apply atrazine in California. 2,400 parts per billion. They have 24,000 times the atrazine in their urine than we use to chemically castrate frogs and fish. 24,000 times what we know is already having a negative impact on men in Columbia, Missouri. One of these guys could pee in a bucket, and I could dilute it 24,000 times and use the atrazine in their urine to chemically castrate and feminize 24,000 buckets of 30 tadpoles each.
St. Jude es un lugar.
Learns phrases like environmental justice, because most of these individuals are Latinx or in California, Mexican American. And then I thought about the impact that increasing estrogen would have on humans, because the atrazine has the same effect in human cells. If you take human cancer cells, and we've done some of this work, that don't normally make aromatase or estrogen, and give them atrazine, they start making estrogen, just like we've shown in fish and frogs and rats and reptiles and in birds. What's more is if you look at prostate cancer, there's an 8.4-fold increase in prostate cancer in their factory where they make atrazine in a community that's 80% Black, 80% African American. There's studies showing that there's correlations between atrazine in their drinking water and breast cancer incidence in women in Kentucky. And that's just a correlation, but their own laboratory showed in 1994 that if you give rats atrazine, you increase the incidence of mammary cancer or breast cancer above animals that aren't exposed. This is an interesting problem because breast cancer, the #1 cancer in women, is estrogen dependent. And this aromatase that I've talked about produces the estrogen during breast cancer that stimulates those breast cancers to grow and divide and turn into tumors and spread. In fact, the role of aromatase is so important in breast cancer that the #1 treatment for breast cancer right now is a chemical called letrozole. It works by knocking out aromatase, decreasing estrogen, so that even if you have cancerous cells, they don't grow and turn into a tumor. That drug, though, has to work against the 80 million pounds of atrazine that we're using every year. That's the #1 contaminant of drinking water that does exactly the opposite. I got in trouble because I pointed out that Novartis Oncology in the year 2000 offered treatments for cancers that range from breast cancer. So the same company that gave us 80 million pounds of this contaminant associated with breast cancer was also selling a chemical that does the opposite to treat breast cancer. Yeah, they weren't too happy about me pointing that out. I became concerned. I'm just a little boy who likes frogs, but I became concerned because if you look at the top 13 cancers you're going to get in this country, Blacks, African Americans are more likely to get 11 out of the 13 and more likely to die from 13 out of 13. Biology? My colleagues who are experts in cancers tell me that less than 30% of cancer can be explained by genetics. That means that when the doctor tells you that you're going to get breast cancer, more likely if your sister, your aunt, or somebody in your family has it, they're not telling you have bad genes necessarily. They're telling you that you've been exposed to the same crap as the rest of your family.
That's what he's saying.
Because if you're a minority, if you're an immigrant, if you're first generation, if you're low income, you're more likely to live in and more likely to work in areas where you're exposed to chemicals that we know are associated with adverse health outcomes. What's more is with the exception of HeLa cells, the cancer cells that we use to study cancer don't come from minorities. So even if we find the cure, Coleman, it may not be applicable to people who need it the most. So I think what's happened is my interest in this aquatic organism has taught me a great deal about this aquatic organism. Because we all start out as aquatic in the amniotic fluid. And these chemicals that I study in my tadpoles can cross the placenta. In fact, we now know that your children will be exposed to over 300 synthetic chemicals before they leave the womb. And most of them, we have no idea what the biological impact is. For atrazine, we do know from rats, which are a proxy for us, that if you give rats atrazine, an EPA lab showed those rats are more likely to have an abortion. Of those rats that don't have an abortion, the sons are born with prostate disease. Of those rats that don't abort, the daughters are born with impaired memory development, such that when they grow up, their offspring experience retarded growth and development. And it was these studies that moved me to most, that made me realize I can't just be a little boy who likes frogs. Because see that rat on the bottom? That rat on the bottom never saw atrazine. The rat on the bottom was affected by atrazine that its grandmother was exposed to. The rat on the bottom never saw atrazine. The rat on the bottom was affected by atrazine that its grandmother was exposed to. So when I think about my little girl, my son, the fact that my grandchildren, that your grandchildren, could be affected by chemicals that we're using today, it moved me in a very different way than just a little boy who likes frogs. It's just a correlation, but we already know, studies have already been done by the Center for Disease Control and others, that if you get pregnant during peak atrazine contamination, you're more likely to have babies with birth defects, including malformed genitals in the male babies. My little girl, my son, the fact that my grandchildren, that your grandchildren, could be affected by chemicals that we're using today, it moved me in a very different way than just a little boy who likes frogs. It's just a correlation, but we already know, studies have already been done by the Center for Disease Control and others, that if you get pregnant during peak atrazine contamination, you're more likely to have babies with birth defects, including malformed genitals in the male babies. The EPA has acknowledged this, but they say, quote, a monetary value is assigned to disease impairments and shortened lives and weighed against the benefits of keeping a chemical in use. A monetary value. If you look at California, I'm often giving this talk outside of California, we're the 5th or 7th, depends on who you talk to, largest economy in the world because of agriculture, not because of tech or Hollywood. We produce 50% of the US's food. Half of the US's food comes from California. As a result, we use more pesticides than any other state, and 90% of the workers are Latinx. If I put in red here, the top 10 counties for agriculture, these are the counties, the 30% that makes us the 5th largest economy in the world. What if I plot onto that the 30 poorest towns in California? Environmental justice. So the people who make us the 5th largest economy in the world are the same people who are paying that cost that the EPA talks about. And so when I thought about this as a little boy who likes frogs, it motivated me to cross the line, so to speak. Crossing that line cost me. The chemical manufacturers set out to discredit me with personal attacks. They said, hey, he's biologist turned activist. You can't be a scientist.
I want to pause it, y'all. I just got I got a battery. Master teacher gave me a battery for my mouse, so I wasn't able to pause in certain areas. But what I want you all to just take a minute and note what he just said. He had to pay a price. See, most of us don't want to have to deal with the fact that it's going to cost us for what we know. We're not willing to step in that gap and take that hit and take that lick. But he did so that he can get this information to us. But listen to what he's saying, because this is very powerful. Okay?
And an activist. They tried to discredit me, but when they were interviewed by New Yorker magazine, they said it simply wasn't true. I must be crazy. I must be making it up. They said, and I quote, I am troubled by a suggestion that we have ever tried to discredit anyone. Our focus has always been on communicating the science and setting the record straight. I am troubled at the suggestion that we've ever tried to discredit anyone. Where on earth would I have gotten the idea that they tried to discredit me? Well, it turns out they settled out of court, $105 million lawsuit, and all of their secret, like how we're going to get Tyrone notes, came out from their meetings. Their strategy became public. And look what the first goal under science was in their program. Where on earth did anybody get the idea that they would ever try to discredit anyone? I had to make a change. Academia, my advisor told me, don't be an advocate, let the science speak for itself. But I had to think about this, that we're being rewarded in the ivory tower.
But look at what he said, family. And this is how they do us. This is how they do athletes and all people that are in influential positions. And it's sort of like don't rock the cradle. You know what I'm saying? Or don't bite the hand that feeds you. Right? I see you, T Swin. You feel me? So what he's trying to get you all to see is that he had to make a conscious decision to release this information. This is some very powerful information, right? Check it out.
Are promoted for publishing things that the public doesn't have access to. I changed my mind about this philosophy because Syngenta, the company, says on their website, they assume no obligation to update forward-looking statements to reflect actual results. Pardon my language, but who says shit like that? But what concerned me more is that the EPA says that the ultimate decision of whether or not to ban atrazine is much bigger than science. It weighs in public opinion. And I thought the EPA is counting on my mom. The EPA is counting. Let me pause that and let y'all read that. Can y'all see that? Look at what he just said, family, to us. Listen, they know that this chemical has been proven to change the sexual orientation. It'll turn a male into a female, right? Look at this. The ultimate decision is much bigger than science. It weighs in public opinion. And let me move it back just a little bit so y'all can really hear what he's really trying to tell us. Changed my mind about this philosophy because Syngenta, the company, says on their website, they assume no obligation to update forward-looking statements to reflect actual results. Pardon my language, but who says shit like that? But what concerned me more is that the EPA says that the ultimate decision of whether or not to ban atrazine is much bigger than science. It weighs in public opinion. And I thought the EPA is counting on my mom. The EPA is counting on you to help it make its decision. And I'm publishing my work in journals that you can't get in Barnes and Noble. We have to change the way we do things in the ivory tower. There's a philosophy by a great thinker that goes like this: those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. This guy said that, by the way. And I didn't grow up privileged. I don't know about you. All I know is that now I'm here. Now you are here. You are privileged and you have a duty. And I've reasoned that we can change the past, but only if we act now while it is still the future. Gratitude, family, for y'all hanging in here and really listening to that. Now, I want to put something else up here, and we're going to go through it, okay? I want you all to look at this, okay? All right. Now, he just shared, if you all heard that, you'll be able to go back and listen to it again. But if you all were hearing anything that he was saying, he is saying they are tampering with the sexual orientation. And he said, and he's noting that they know that they are doing it. And that this is bigger than science. It's based upon public opinion. And when they know that they've already programmed the public, which is we're going to get into, you all don't want to miss this Saturday's Truth Session. This Saturday Truth Session at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be on Facebook. We're going to be on Facebook, excuse me. We're also going to be on streaming. We're going to be streaming to YouTube as well. One of my oldest daughters, spiritual daughters, is going to be in the house, Kiana, out of Little Rock, Arkansas area. Very powerful young sister. She's on point. So she's going to be in there. We're going to be dealing with programming, okay?
So, but he knows that the people have been programmed. But I want y'all to take a look at that while I'm talking. And this is what Master Teacher put up here. Whoa. So the public does extensive experiment and makes information or informed decisions, right? Ludicrous. Yes, indeed, Master Teacher. That's ludicrous to even think so. Thank you. Thank you, Queen Charlita. Um, it is. It's ludicrous. But I want you all to look at this. Look at some research that's been done. Sexual orientation appears to be influenced by biology. And isn't that what he was just dealing with? Biology? But it's not caused by a single gay gene because there is no such thing as a gay gene. But if you listen to Dr. Hayes, he explained it to you. He talked about it, right? He talked about how the chemical is changing the genetic structure to create this kind of behavior, right? So if you just take a minute and think about our ancestors, the elders that were before us, they were always singing, "It's something in the water," right? We thought that was just like an old cliche, like an idiom or something of that nature. But they were really singing something very profound, right? V- Yes, creating confusion, Queen Octavia. Yes. So look at this. So there is no such thing as a gay gene. So when someone says, "Well, I was born gay," you know, then for educational purposes only, and no intended pun to in any way condemn anyone for their belief and how they think, right? And this is just for educational purposes as we're discussing these things. But look at what research goes on to say. Research suggests that being gay is linked to a combination of, watch this, watch this. It is a combination of genetics, many genes with small effects, not one single gene, right? Of course not, it's not one single gene. Now, Dr. Hayes just explained to us how this is happening. They're putting it in the water. You know, if they're putting it in the water, it's in the food. If it's in the food, it's in the vaccines, allegedly, for educational purposes only. So what are they trying to do? Control the population. Why are they trying to control the population? Because our European counterparts, for educational purposes only, are at zero birth rate. In other words, in X amount of years, our European counterparts will be the minority here in the States. They would be the minority. They are already the minority throughout the cosmos, throughout the universe, right? So what are they trying to do? They're trying to what? Limit who gets to live. Or if you're going to live, then you lack the ability to what? To reproduce. Okay. Now this is serious. These are things that we need to be talking about and going over, right? Yes. Queen Octavia says we live in a bubble. Everything is recycled. Yes. But look at this. So genetically, many genes with small effects, not one single gene, right? And then it talks about parental hormones. Look at this. Parental hormones. Okay. Now, parental hormones exposure in the womb, brain development before birth. Look at that. Parental hormones. So, whatever that queen is experiencing is being passed on to the child. How? Through the hormones that they're being exposed to in the womb. So, in other words, the mother can orientate the child. Not only that, but if she is exposed to the atrazine, if she's exposed to that, then it's going to get to the child and create what? Retardation. Um, Also deformity. This is wild. This is crazy, and we're looking at it. We're looking at an explosion in the Black community of gay growth, and we're not, again, belittling anyone, badgering anyone, criticizing anyone in a negative way. And I know I'm going to get some some kickback from this, but some pushback, but that's okay because the conversation has to be had because all of us, if you're in this room, you have noticed an explosion in gay behavior, right? If you experience that, if you know what I'm talking about, put it on the timeline. Put a 2 on the timeline. Yes, of course. Stop using the chemical, right? Yes. Hey, Michelle. Greetings. Okay. Okay. Now we all pretty much we done noticed this. We see this, so we know that this is abnormal. Something is going on, right? And we just can't put our finger on it. But Dr. Hayes did. He put his finger on it. So look at this: the parental hormones, what the child is exposed to. Why? Because the child is developing, mentally developing. So if there's some chemicals going into the body that has an ill effect on the child, then it's going to what? Retard the growth. That cause the child to be latent, right? So let us move on. Major medical organizations like the American Psychological Association and the American Medical Association states that sexual orientation is not a choice and cannot be voluntarily changed. Look at that. It isn't a choice, and then it cannot be voluntarily changed. So anything other than how you are born, then it's going to be an alteration. You're altering your what anatomy. Isn't this interesting? We don't talk about this to try to wrap our minds around what the hell is going on, right, with our children. I know me as a male because I'm a mentor, right? These young men are coming out effeminate, right? They're more feminine than the women are. Just on a light note, fun note, y'all know how we say, boy, that's pretty Ricky, is what they call him, right? Okay, listen. So what you're almost getting is a hermaphroditic or hermaphrodite type of behavior now, right? Because what the doctor was saying to you, showing you that what it does is it's going to change the sexual orientation. The male frog, if you all notice, started what? Producing eggs, right? Where his testes were. He was no longer what? Testicular as he was when he started out. So all I'm doing is giving us information. And if you take this information and realize that, check your source of what you're ingesting before you do it. Okay? Find out where you were at. Make sure there's no chemicals that are being used near you, in your neighborhood, in your rivers where you're fishing, and all of that because it's important. Yeah. Okay. We need to take a toast after that one, don't we, y'all? Salute. Salute. If you all have noticed, we're trying to make sure that we keep this conversation grown and straight down the middle, right? So that we can't be accused of attacking any group of people. Okay. So we're keeping it straight down the center. You all are doing an excellent job with your comments and how we are doing this. Okay. So let's look at this last one. So most evidence indicate that people do not choose to be gay. Orientation develops naturally, likely before or around birth. Look at this. Orientation develops naturally. We know what orientation means, right? Hello. We know what orientation means, right? Orientation means that you're being what? Taught. You're being introduced to something, right? So if you're in an environment where that is a normal, natural behavior, then of course what? You are more likely to take on that behavior because generally we retain more of what we see than what we hear, right? Okay. Queen Octavia says, what is the point of making our society disfigured and dysfunctional? And that is a great question. That is a great question. And then with that, you have to note then that for 500 years, Queen Octavia, the the only leaders that we've had in our eye gates are our European counterparts. Okay. So now you think about where does that behavior comes from? If we're not in the position where our behavior is dominant, then we must be in a inferior position where are those that are in control and in authority are displaying what their behavior. Think about it. Think about it. So we got all kind of documents and history of the behavior of our European counterparts and what they've done and what they do and how they live, right? Which is why you have this big old situation with E, with JE. We'll just put those initials out there because we don't want this flagged. JE, this is with this problem that you're having right now with JE, European, and then the other one is DT, right? These are people in positions where they can do what? Project their behavior. They're in a position where they can orientate, which is why you see the people taking on the characteristics in the behavior of TD or DT, excuse me, and JE, right? They're taking on the characteristics, there's behaviors. So everybody is like a cockroach when you turn the light on, right? They are. Yes, we talking about them E files. Yeah, and how people are turning up in them. But look at this though. But the orientation develops naturally, likely before or around birth, even if someone doesn't realize it until later. So what's happening? You're being what? Orientated. You are being introduced to something that you don't even know you're being introduced to it. Because a child is innocent. A child don't know if that behavior is incorrect, right? Or shouldn't be engaged in. And s and so specifically at an early age, right? So why am I saying this? Because this is very important. If as a people we're going to survive, we're gonna have to return back to how we as a people were able to come together and create a community. We didn't have a society, okay? We never had a society. A society has always been what our European counterparts have utilized. So what do you mean, Apostle? Because a society is a group of people that are individual people that live in a certain area. But a community is a group of people that share the same culture, same rituals, um, and um, relationships are more developed and based off of love more so than a business agreement, right? So there's a number of things that are going on in the community. Okay. So we've always had a community, and our counterparts have always had what a society because they've always lived as individuals because they've always what been in competition with each other because they was under what Darwin theory, Darwinism, right? Darwin believed that everything in nature was at what in competition with itself when he was totally wrong. Nature is not in competition with itself. When you look at nature and the animals that are there, they're only eating to survive. They're not killing for sports. They're not killing to see who's the biggest, the baddest, and the strongest. They're doing that for what? To eat, right? Okay. And Queen Octavia says, I pray to the Most High to keep me and mine safe, protect, and hide from this mess. Yes, it's crazy, but once you start getting the right kind of information, then guess what? You can be victorious. Okay. Yes, indeed. How's everybody doing? Y'all good out there? I see y'all hanging in here. Yes. Let me see what time it is. All right. Okay. We got 5 more minutes, fam. 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes on the People's Podcast. Is there anyone that want to say anything? You might want to come up and get the mic. You can come on with me. I'll send you a link. Yes, indeed. But let's have a toast. Toast to Wind Down Wednesday, Therapy with a Sip, Grown Folk Conversation, the People's Podcast. With your host with the most, the one, the apostle, the prophet, the cosmic commander. Tonight's podcast has been brought to you by none other than the Prince of Peace, Queen Octavia, the master teacher, the quantum shifter, the shape shifter, the code breaker, baby, who is responsible for the wine tonight. Also, Tracy and Anthony Love, also Dorothy Wilson, also Pastor Singletary, also Craig Leverett, the intuitive one, also Shirlita, and also Kizzy and T Swin. Men Can't Always Be Wrong podcast. And also, if you're ever in the Springfield, Illinois area, please stop by our family owned restaurant, Clay's Popeyes Barbecue, 1121 South Grand East, Springfield, Illinois. Stop in there. They're also sponsoring us tonight. Also, I want to shout out my mom, which she turned 80 this month. Shout out also to Kina Bina Thumbelina, the one that point the finger, baby. Yes, indeed. Yes, the songbird. Also to my daughter, Saraya. Also to another one of my daughters, Michaela. And to all of you that are having a birthday this month, shout out to you. And yes, sir. Gratitude, gratitude. Yes, indeed. Gratitude, gratitude. 217, baby. Y'all representing. I see you. Yes, indeed. Then 201. Oh man, I was in love with a sister from Springfield, Illinois back in the day. Laugh out loud. See, I think hey, in 201, we connected so many ways, man. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Gratitude, you all. Gratitude. Gratitude. All right, family. Listen, I just want to make an all call. Let me make an all call before we get out of here, family. Listen, go ahead and donate. You all know that I'm a content creator and I need your financial support. Okay. There's the information for you guys to donate. Go ahead and donate so I can shout you out. Thank you for your donation, Prince of Peace, Queen Octavia. Thank you for your donation. The master teacher, the quantum shifter, the shape shifter, the code breaker. Thank you for your donation. Let me see if anyone else. Thank you, Queen Shalita. Thank you for your donation. Gratitude. Yes, indeed. You still have time before we get off of here, but don't y'all think that was some excellent information? I know some of you probably going to go back and really listen to what he was really delivering to us. But the thing that really stuck with me, fam, when he talked about Albert Einstein, listen, when he talked about those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. And he made a conscious decision that he had to pay a price for so that, listen, we could get the information. If you caught what he said, he was saying they are hiding it in books so that you'll never be able to read it. Because why? It's in the Ivory League libraries that only certain people are privy to it. But what he said was that I'm going to make it available to you at my own peril. Because having the privilege to know, now I have to do something. How many of you that when you find out that missing piece that you've been looking for, are you willing to use it or are you going to bury it? Right? I'm finishing up on my book. I'm taking my time with it because it's solution driven. So when you all get a chance, when I release it, you're going to see that there is some very powerful information that some of us know and we're releasing it. And that's not going to be without a cause or a penalty, right? So that's why we need you all support. When you get an opportunity to donate, donate. Whether it be $1, whether it be $5, whether it be $10,000, whatever it may be, donate. Give to the cause because you know someone is stepping up and is going to be there and give the information that's pertinent, right? You see what I'm saying? Yes, the conversation was off the Richter scale. This was one for the books. Yes, sir. Gratitude, master teacher, the quantum shifter, the shape shifter, the code breaker. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Gratitude, queen. I will rejoice. Yes. Yes, indeed. I see y'all still hanging in here like dirty laundry. So, do anyone have anything else that they want to go ahead and put on the timeline so we can go ahead and dismiss? Let me see if there's any other donors. Okay. All right, fam. Guess what? We've reached that space, place, and time where I must say, oh, what you got? Muse over it, cogitate upon it, ponder on it, meditate upon it. But by all means, do what? Govern yourselves accordingly. One love, eternal light, peace, power, prosperity. In the words of the Prince of Peace, excellent health. In my Hebrew tongue, Shalom Aleichem Mishpachah, meaning peace be unto you, prosperity be unto you, good health be unto you, long life be unto you, until we meet again.